topic which is, ladies and gentlemen, this delegation is strong faith that the ability to learn, understand, and think in a logical way depends on factors connected with the natural environment in which a person lives, other than the genetic factors. Moving on, ladies and gentlemen, as non-famous, we are saying that a child can be born in a family with intellectual greatness, and it's the same way he or she goes to be very sharp. Moving forward, ladies and gentlemen, we have people that are born slow to think, basically known as Down syndrome. By this, ladies and gentlemen, we mean that a person's intelligence has been determined at birth rather than the environment, ladies and gentlemen. Can we just now go on to say that it is because of the environment that has caused this person? Accepted?
Sir, are you trying to mean that Down syndrome, their condition cannot be affected by the environment?
Thank you, ma'am. We are saying that when you talk of Down syndrome, ladies and gentlemen, we say that a person can have more or less genes than expected. A person can have 47 or 45 genes rather than the expected of 46. Hence, we have a Down syndrome. But is this environment, ladies and gentlemen, that is contributing to this? Actually, no. It is because of the genes that is within the person. The setup, ladies and gentlemen, of that person that determines are you going to be Down or are going to be intelligent. Moving forward, ladies and gentlemen, we as non-famous, we are saying that we have situations, ladies and gentlemen, that grandmothers would say to their grandchildren, oh, this grandson, this granddaughter of mine is now behaving, is now acting like his father. But what does this mean, ladies and gentlemen? It actually shows that this child is actually inherited the ways in which his father used to live, which is the intelligent quotient, ladies and gentlemen. And it is because it was inherited, ladies and gentlemen, at the very start. And it is not the environment, but rather the genetic setup. Who can also deny the fact that I have the same characteristics as my parents have, ladies and gentlemen? By this, ladies and gentlemen, I mean the physical features, that I have. I also mean the intellectual being of me, ladies and gentlemen. This actually shows that it is not because of the environment, but rather it is because of the genes of a person. Now I shall go on to produce my exhibit number 1, which goes to be hereditary, ladies and gentlemen, which actually shows that genes can be inherited, ladies and gentlemen. My stage manager also
Point of information.
Yes, accept it.
I recall you stated that you have the same characteristics as your father. You have the same face as your father. But what happens to your face when you enter an accident?
What happens to my face when I enter an accident? Absolutely, I will just have slight scratches, ladies and gentlemen. Yes, I still remain the same as my father. The outlook, my appearance doesn't change because I've been through an accident, ladies and gentlemen. Having a broken leg, a broken arm, ladies and gentlemen, doesn't change the reality. The reality still stays the same. I am still part and parcel of my family. No one can deny that. Thank you, sir. Intelligence also depends on genetic factors. Since in one environment, ladies and gentlemen, we find people with different IQs. What do we mean, ladies and gentlemen? If we are to take an institution like our high school, the very place that we are here, ladies and gentlemen, we ought to find out that even though we are receiving the same education, even though we are receiving the same resources from the same teachers, ladies and gentlemen, we have people, others getting 10 A's, ladies and gentlemen, whilst others going and getting a chain of yours. What does this reflect? It actually shows that it is not the environment that the person lives, but actually it is what makes that person. This is the genetical setup of that person, ladies and gentlemen. Yes, it has nothing to do with genes, and that point is crushed. More so, ladies and gentlemen, if intelligence was based on environmental factors, ladies and gentlemen, would actually have created a rule whereby we would say that when you are entering this world, ladies and gentlemen, entering into an intelligence zone, ladies and gentlemen. Yeah, but it is not all. It's not all about that. So it actually reflects that it is genetical setup rather, not the environment, ladies and gentlemen. So we as the nano-famous, we still go on standing firm and is unshakable for the topic emotion, ladies and gentlemen, which reads that this house believes that intelligence depends on environmental factors rather than genetic factors, ladies and gentlemen. I shall go on to give a summary of our response on what we were saying, ladies and gentlemen. We were saying that a child can be born in a family with intellectual greatness, but that person can be also very sharp. We were also saying that we have people that are born slow to understand, basically known as Down syndrome, that have been controlled by genetics, ladies and gentlemen. We also say that intelligence is dependent on genetical factors, because in one environment we find people with different intellectual quotients, ladies and gentlemen. Hence, it is not all about the environment. Ladies and gentlemen, at this point in time, I shall leave this stage to my second speaker, who will come and add flesh to our response, and the third speaker, who will come and replenish, crash, and demolish all the nullified points that we have been raised by our dear affirmers. With this, ladies and gentlemen, I thank you.
It is a very good evening to you, ladies and gentlemen. I am the second speaker from the team captain, standing firm and unshaken with the topic in notion, which is that intelligence is affected by environmental factors rather than genetic factors. We, as team government, are going for this notion. But before I move on to our key points that have been introduced by my first speaker, I shall first clarify, or better, nullify the points that have been raised by team opposition. The first speaker of team opposition stood in front of you and stated that genetics, when it comes to genetics, one is born a Down syndrome due to genetics. But ladies and gentlemen, why is this person being born short of the chromosomes? That is the question to note. The answer is simple. The environment the mother is in, let's say the mother is exposed to harmful gases, better yet, marijuana smoke. At the end of the day, doesn't the child that is being born a Down syndrome?
Point of information.
Accepted.
Sir, do you realize that these gases are affecting the genes? Hence, it is the genetic factor, not the environment. It all comes back to the genes.
The answer is very simple, ladies and gentlemen. What is a gene? A gene in its normal state is the gene that our topic is stating. But I said, what is the end result of one smoking marijuana that is coming from the environment? The answer is still simple. Down syndrome occurs. I hope the team opposition have been answered. The first speaker of team opposition also came here and stated that I have the same characteristics as my father. And I asked the BOI, and he said, yes, I will have a scratch on my face. That has changed the characteristics of our fellow first speaker. He is no longer the same as his father because his face has been changed. And by the way, we are not debating on the artificial characteristics, but rather the intelligence of someone. The first speaker also came here and stated that if one is learning with another person at the same school, one receives 10 A's, while the other receives 9 A's. The point to ask here is, was the one who acquired 10 A's supposed to acquire 10 A's? The simple answer there is simple. He was not supposed to acquire the 10 A's if the environment didn't boost him to get the 10 A's. If one passes O-level and becomes an A-level science subject student, he is expected to achieve, or better yet, express himself as the others within his class. But why is it that the other gets 15 points and the other gets 10 points? The answer is simple. The conditions that you are living in, the amount of medicine that you are taking, what kind of social aspects are you exposed to? These are the things that differ us. And all these things are coming from the environment.
Point of information.
Accepted.
Social aspects being contributed by the environment are basically the same since we are living in the same school. So if the environment influence is same, then we should all be on the same level at the end of the day.
You say that the social aspects are all the same. I point to note, this is wrong. Why? The social aspects. What are we exposed to? The friends that we have, this is the environment. It's not genetics. Each and every one student, each and every one people in school has a different friend. At the end of the day, their social things that are affecting them are different. Thereby, the environment is influencing them. Before I exhaust all my time when it's trying to nullify all these points that I've already nullified by the team opposition, I shall merely state what the team opposition, the speaker came here stated. He stated that I am going for the notion in motion, ladies and gentlemen. If I recall correctly, we are the team government, we are their famous. You came to our side. Therefore, there is no debate to okay. With this, I thank you for nullifying your points. Let me move on to our points. We are saying that the resources that one has or that a child has while he's growing up influence the child's IQ level. What is IQ? Before we start, the intelligence of one. This is the ability to grasp, ladies and gentlemen, and apply. Simply apply. We are saying that if one is raised from a family of mechanics, he sees people fixing cars, he sees people mending doors, he sees people fixing the cars through a mechanical method. When that child grows, won't he have an IQ to grasp faster what problem a car is facing when he sees the car smoking emissions of dark clouds? The answer is simple. He will, because of what? The resources that he acquired as a child.
Point of information.
Accepted.
You demand quality intelligence or you refer to it as knowledge. Please clarify.
Thank you, sir. What is knowledge? Knowledge, if you have knowledge of something, it is shown by simply speaking about it. But what is IQ? I might not know what is E is equal to MC squared, but I know what velocity a wave moves with. That is simple. IQ intelligence, that is motivated by what I am exposed to. I hope you answered team opposition. We are also saying that the background of a child, also, not only of a child, but rather of an adult or a human being, influences the IQ level of one, that is the intelligence level. This is clearly stated with exhibit Victor, that my first speaker will show the panel. Exhibit Victor shows a feral child who was raised by animals. He is likened to neglected children. I quote, neglected children. Ladies and gentlemen, it goes on to say that this child was unable to speak. He wasn't able to grasp the concept of speaking as a real human being. Why? Because of the background in which he grew in. As a simple state, I don't think that I have to further clarify. This clearly shows that our environment truly does influence the IQ level of one. Accepted.
You say that he was not influenced by the environment he was taken into. Showing that through the environment, the reason is because of the genetic factors. It failed to adapt to the environment.
Thank you, sir. It's not the environment. I did this deliberately before I move on. I did this because the environment they are talking about is simply the trees and the buildings around us. But our environment, what we have, the friends that we have, these are the things that make up our environment. We as team government are also saying that the nutrition that one acquires as a child also boosts his IQ. We are also saying that health also contributes to a better IQ. If you have a bad health, for example, one who is in a cabbage state, that is one who is in coma, ladies and gentlemen. His IQ level is noted to decrease by the instant. Why? Because he is not healthy. He is not in his normal state. With this, we thank you.
very much, Mr. Second Speaker. I'll quickly ask the second speaker of the non-affirmative to take stage.
Well, the clouds may fade away, but the sky will always remain forever. And the same manner, ladies and gentlemen, the environment may change, but the intelligence will never change. In the same manner as the clouds only expose the sky, so will the environment only expose, ladies and gentlemen, the genetic factors. I present to you, I am the second speaker of the non-affirmative delegation, going strongly against the topic, ladies and gentlemen, that states that this house believes that intelligence depends on environmental rather than genetic factors. And our reference topic states that this house believes that the ability to learn, the ability to understand, think in a logical way about things depends on factors connected with the natural conditions, ladies and gentlemen, in which people, plants, animals live in, rather than, ladies and gentlemen, factors connected with the genes of living things that control these physical characteristics. And our line of argument is that the determining factors of intelligence are solely or mainly genetic, as we all resemble our parents as humans. Allow me to start by just correcting the affirmers. The affirmers came here, ladies and gentlemen, and talked of how educational toys boost intelligence. But well, ladies and gentlemen, if I may ask, does that mean that a child who grows up in a remote area where they are not able, ladies and gentlemen, to afford for those toys, that child will grow with a low intelligent quotient? Certainly not, ladies and gentlemen. Despite having that inaccessibility to their toys, ladies and gentlemen, their intelligent quotient will always remain high if it is high, accepted.
So can you please define educational toys?
Well, educational toys, there's things like abacuses. We have abacuses, ladies and gentlemen. We have those video games where you learn to play acting and stuff. Now, if I may ask, are you telling me that the same child who cannot afford to buy an abacus, ladies and gentlemen, for $20, won't be able to have a high intelligent quotient simply because they cannot afford? Certainly not. Well, they also say that our first speaker was on their side, but he was not actually on your side, if I may correct you. He was only questioning your line of argument as it was not clear and stated. Now, allow me to move on to our points as the non-affirmers. Firstly, intelligence, which can be known as fluid intelligence, which refers, ladies and gentlemen, to the analytical reasoning ability as well as memory and information processing, is genetically determined as shown by my exhibit, IQ, and my stage manager, which is IQ. Ladies and gentlemen, what we're saying at this point is that the reasoning ability, ladies and gentlemen, and the memory, you cannot say you were born in an environment that does not support or that supports high levels of memory, ladies and gentlemen. The environment has no part in such things. It is something that is natural. You're not in a 2-year-old child, ladies and gentlemen. This child is very intelligent at a very tender age. Why? Because it's something that is inborn. It's not something that is contributed by the environment. And it will be contributed by the acceptance.
Doesn't the environment teach you how to apply?
Well, ladies and gentlemen, the environment does not teach you how to apply, but it is, ladies and gentlemen, the genetic factors that are within you teach you how to apply the environment in living, not the other way around. Well, moving on, ladies and gentlemen, intelligence depends on genetic factors. Since in the same and one environment, ladies and gentlemen, we have people with different intelligent quotients. A typical example is of the schools who are gathered at a SASA cultural competition, meaning that our schools, they have same environment, they are family. But if I were to ask, ladies and gentlemen, I am telling you that for all the students who sat for the ordinary level and advanced level examinations last year, they all got 15 points and 10 A's. Certainly not, ladies and gentlemen. They were some with 15 points. Others, they were actually sitting at 0 points. Others had 10 A's. Others were at 8 A's. Others, they had 5 C's. And others, zero subjects. This clearly shows that no matter how much we have the same environment, no matter how much we try, ladies and gentlemen, to work, if it is not in you, if it is not genetically or inborn in you, you will never change that aspect. The environment has failed to change that one. Had it been able to change that one, ladies and gentlemen, we would all be having 10 A's, 15 points, 100% passes for each and every school, ladies and gentlemen, in the nation. But the fact that you're failing to adapt or to reach that goal shows us that environment has no part to say in the genetic sector, in the intelligence sector. Moving on. In the same manner that diseases, behavioral traits, language, and physical features, ladies and gentlemen, are hereditary and behavioral being genetic, so is intelligence. We should get to realize that behavioral traits are said to be adopted, ladies and gentlemen, or inherited from the parents, from the family, which is a genetic factor. But if we are to look closely, it is also said that intelligence influences, ladies and gentlemen, the behavioral traits. So if these same behavioral traits that are being influenced by intelligence and yet relating or coming back to the parents, it clearly shows us that we are talking of genes, we're not talking of the environment, ladies and gentlemen. And when we're talking about the environment, we would certainly even have at a school setting all the 949 students in Howard having the same behavior. Same applies to all the schools gathered here. Each and every individual will have the exact same behavior and characteristics. Point of information is right. But the fact that we differ, why are there differences in the human race? How can you distinguish? It's not the environment, it's a genetic factor. And so we continue to say that there are genetic factors, not environmental factors. Most ladies and gentlemen, intelligence is naturally induced. That is genetic influence. Intelligent people are generally curious people, people who are willing to go outside, explore the world, and have an insight of how the world is like, ladies and gentlemen. Accepted.
Sir, between a person who gets 0 points but is really good at soccer and the person who gets 10 points but is really bad at soccer, who is more intelligent?
Well, ladies and gentlemen, if intelligence had been based on environment, they would be different. They would be different. There would be no difference. But the fact, ladies and gentlemen, that it is a genetic influence. There are those differences, ladies and gentlemen, because of the different levels of intelligent quotient. Others are intelligent in soccer, others in books. Why? Because the environment has no take. If the environment influenced, we would be all good in soccer, all good in books, equal on the same level. Anyway, continuing. My example to curiosity is very clearly states that intelligence, ladies and gentlemen, is genetic. And deep in environmental, ladies and gentlemen. People who are intelligent would not be the ones willing to take risks. Everyone would be willing to take risks. But the fact we have those differences, those who are willing and those who aren't, it shows the difference. So we continue to stand firm and unshakable, saying that genetic factors are the ones which determine, ladies and gentlemen, intelligence and not environmental factors. The environment has no say and partake in the intelligence of a person. And with this, I have finished my case.
Salutations of the day to you all. I'm the third speaker from Team Government, going for the topic that reads, intelligence is based on environmental factors rather than genetics. Now, I would firstly like to clarify on what environment is. I will give an exhibit of exhibit nurture that shows what environment is. Now, environment is our social status, the people we interact with, our health, the resources that we have. This is all environment, not just the area that you live in, that I will tell the non-affirmers to clarify. Now, they talked about people in different countries, how people in different countries must have the same intelligence since they're in the same country. But I pose a question to them. Are people in the same country, do they have the same environment? No, they don't. People in the same country have different people who they talk to, have different resources. So what I'm trying to say is even a person in the United States can live in a society where it is poverty-stricken and they cannot have the kind of resources that they need to boost their intelligence.
Point of information.
Accepted.
So are you telling me that those who are living in third world countries and do not have the resources have low intelligent quotients, and those in developed countries are very intelligent? Is that what you're saying?
That comes back to the point of information that we asked when we asked you what educational toys are. Now let me enlighten you. Educational toys are toys that allow children to learn and play at the same time. This does not have a price tag on it. Educational toys can be something that your father made you when you were a kid. So even in the third world country, you can still have these educational toys, therefore boosting your intelligence. Now, they talked about how institutions with the same kind of people should have the same kind of intelligence if intelligence was unfair, was environmental. But we'll go back and tell them that people in one institution do not have the same environmental factors. Firstly, we can talk about your family background. We don't know where you came from. Maybe where you came from, you were a very abused child. That's why you have a low IQ. Secondly, we can talk about the kind of friends that you associate with. These people can be people with very low IQs. Therefore, you could have a low IQ too. So they cannot talk about how people in the same institution should have the same intelligence if these things were environmental. Because the environment that we're talking about isn't just living in one place, it's about interaction and resources and many more. Now, they asked us a point of information of what knowledge was when we gave an example of a child who was able to fix cars after having lived in an environment where people fix cars. Now, I want to clarify that knowledge is having information on an area, but we define intelligence as being able to grasp, understand, and apply. So what we're saying is this child who lives with mechanics has an environment where they're able to grasp, understand, and apply these things. That is simply what we as team government are saying. Now they talked about how Down syndromes are affected by genetics and not the environment. But don't we know what causes Down syndrome in children? This can be environmental factors. We can talk about the Hiroshima, a place that was attacked in Japan by nuclear bombs. The environment of the radiation of this nuclear weapons now still affects these children. Only trying to say that environment does affect children. Now, Down syndromes can also be affected by the environment they're in when they're in their mother's wombs. Now, when we talk about the environment they eat when they're in the mother's wombs, we can talk about the food that they have, which comes from what the mother takes in. We can talk about the things like if the mother smokes or if she doesn't, or we can talk about injuries that the mother had. Let's say the mother fell down when she was pregnant. And these kind of things can affect this child, which only goes to say that environment does affect genetics.
Point of information.
Accepted.
Are you aware that just about now we say that environment does affect genetics, not intelligence. Genetics, ladies and gentlemen.
So we're simply trying to say that genetics are what makes up intelligence, and this is affected by the environment. So what we're trying to say in very simple terms is that environment does affect the genes of intelligence.
Point of information.
Denied. Now I shall go on to clarify and further explain our points. Now we talked about resources. Now these resources can be anything that we have in our community. Books, parents, and even mentors. You see, they were trying to talk about how people in the rural areas Kenya are supposed to have low IQ because of their environment. But the environment that you're in, which enables you to learn and grasp and understand, is what we're talking about. So we're saying that if a child in the rural areas is able to learn how to head cattle, grasp and understand, then that child is intelligent. Now we're also saying the background of these people. Now we showed you an exhibit about feral children. A boy named Victor who was found in a forest where he was raised by animals. This child was never able to speak properly. Why? Because of the environment in which he lived. He lived in an environment where people didn't talk, so he wasn't able to grasp and understand the whole talking issue. Therefore, his intelligence was reduced. Now we can also talk about neglected children. Neglected children have very low IQs. Why? Because their parents don't take the time and effort to teach these children different things. Therefore, these children grow up being unable to understand, denied, being unable to understand and grasp and apply knowledge. We also talked about health. We took an instance, an example of a person who goes into a coma. Now these people, if we've noticed, their brain activity slowly reduces with increase of time in which they're in a coma. This is because they do not have the exposure to the environment where they can learn and grasp and understand and even apply these things. These people, they cannot grasp things because they don't have anything to grasp, and they cannot apply the knowledge that they already have. Therefore, their brain activity declines. Only trying to show that environmental factors are an influence. With this, I think.
Ladies and gentlemen, intelligence is the ability to apply and to understand knowledge. It is not just the ability to get knowledge. So, ladies and gentlemen, getting knowledge, yes, is environmental based, but understanding and applying it becomes a genetical factor. Hence, intelligence indeed is a genetical factor. A pleasant evening to you all, ladies and gentlemen. I am the second speaker of the Leaders Reply for the non-affirmative delegation, and we will continue to stand firmly against the notion stating that this House believes that intelligence depends on environmental rather than genetic factors. And our rephrase motion states that this House believes that the ability to learn, understand, and think in a logical way, not just a random thinking, ladies and gentlemen, depends on the factors connected with natural conditions in which people, plants, and animals live in, rather than connected with factors of genes which are controlled by genes and produce physical characteristics. Our line of argument continues to stand is that the determining factors of intelligence are solely genetic, as we all resemble what our genes are like, not what our environment is like. Ladies and gentlemen, we should get to realize that we define our environment. We define what we want to live in. So then, if what we define is what defines us, it certainly does not make any sense and there's no cash value, just as Plato once said. Now, we need to understand that we have to look at life from an analytical perspective. And when we look at it from such an angle, ladies and gentlemen, that's when you understand that it is a genetic factor. Well, the affirmers mentioned about the Hiroshima incident affecting. Well, ladies and gentlemen, they are ignorant. They are very, very ignorant. For they do not know that the Hiroshima and Nagasaki incident, ladies and gentlemen, the radioactivity acted upon the genes. It did not act upon the environment. It did not change the color of the water, nor did it change the soil or the buildings. It only changed, ladies and gentlemen, the genetic factors which influenced the results people being given back to Down syndromes. And going into the point or concept, ladies and gentlemen, of injuries of a mother or she's pregnant and then the child becomes affected. How does the child become affected, ladies and gentlemen? It is in rare cases that happens. And in those rare cases, it is not the intelligence, ladies and gentlemen, of the environment. They are the genes. The genes will be so tender and fragile that they are easily altered. And then the genes, they result in the appearance of the child. So it all comes back to the genetic factors and not environmental factors. Moving on to a point, you were simply saying, as the non-affirmers, and will continue to say that intelligence is dependent on genetic factors. As we all say, charity begins at home. But if I may put it across to you, ladies and gentlemen, how many of you here spend 3/4 of the year at home? Probably a few or none. Most of us, most of the children today, we spend 9 months, ladies and gentlemen, at school and 3 months at home. And then you say charity begins at home. If you look at it, what was being referred to as the home? Were the parents and the family, not the literal home, ladies and gentlemen. Because if home or environment influence, ladies and gentlemen, would be influenced by the school, people would say charity begins at school. But because it is genetic, that's why we go back to the home. We go back to the family, to the root, where it came from. We're not talking of the home in where you live. We're not talking of entirely, because ladies and gentlemen, if you have the same character, you never change your character because you have moved from entirely to live in Atlantic. It will remain the same. It is a genetic factor. We also want to say that intelligence, ladies and gentlemen, and information processing are dependent on genetic, because not the environment processes, but your genes, the brain, are the ones that process. Moving on, ladies and gentlemen, we also want to say that as in the same manner as behavioral traits are influenced by the genes, so is intelligence. They are equally of the same importance and same level. So we are simply saying that we have to understand and come to admit and stop, ladies and gentlemen, trying to argue with nature. Stop trying to argue with the reality. You can never change the reality. Reality will always stand. The genes have power over the environment. That's why you can change the environment, but you can never change your gene. Is the end of us being able to do that? Certainly not. So we continue to stand, ladies and gentlemen, and we believe that we're now on our side in the between understanding. So with this, ladies and gentlemen, I have this my case.
It is a very good evening to you all, once again, ladies and gentlemen. I am the second speaker from Team Government, still standing firm and unshaken with the topic that is intelligence depends on the environment rather than the genetic factors. I shall move on to summarize our key points. We as Team Government are simply saying that the resources that one has actually affect or rather influence the IQ of a person. Why? Simply, we say that if we give a child a hunting stick, and if we give a child an algorithmic table, the one with the hunting stick is going to have intelligence or better grasping and applying the art of hunting. Whereas the one who has been given the algebraic table knows, or better, it understands mathematics better. We are also saying that the background, the social status that your family has, what are the things that your family do, actually influence the intelligence level of a person. Let's take, for example, one who lives in a family that is always stressing, and the one who lives in a peaceful, quiet environment that gives him time to think more and further elaborate or better expand his genetic factors within the environment. The result is clear. The one with the stressful environment has a lower IQ, or better yet, he has a better IQ to understand the problems that you face in life. Whereas the one who has been brought up in a family that is never ever quarreling and that is never stressing always has a low IQ on how to handle things that are okay while we are quarreling. We are also saying that how your parents interact with you also influences how you as one, your IQ level is. Why? This is simple. We are simply saying that when one has a high IQ. Yes, we are agreeing with the non-affirmers that genes affect the IQ of a person. But our topic states that intelligence depends on environment rather than. They are both affecting. But which one has got the better exposure or better influence on the IQ? And that's why we are saying the environment. The third speaker came here and said that our genes are like the sky. The environment are the ones that remove the clouds. So if the environment don't remove the clouds, will you have a high IQ? No, ladies and gentlemen. This is simple. That's why we are saying that the environment plays a larger role, while we are trying to better influence the intelligence of a person. We're also saying that the nutrition that one has, the food that you eat. Why is it intelligent people are saying that they eat a balanced diet? If you eat good food within the right time, your IQ is expected to rise. Let's take, for example, the rumor, or better yet, the sale of fish actually helps you to have a better IQ. Where is that coming from? Nutrition, ladies and gentlemen. Nutrition is the environment. We get it from the environment. We are also saying that your health status also affects your IQ. Like I stated before, if you are sick, your IQ is low. This has been tested by doctors and has been all over the news that if one is in a coma, his IQ decreases. And there is no other reason for me to further expatiate on this point, because we already know that if your health is not okay, your IQ, whether you're a mechanic or better yet you're a doctor, you can't operate while you are sick. Your knowledge, or better yet, your intelligence on how to work on a person has been disrupted by the environment, which is the thing that affected you to get sick. To move on to clash the points of the team opposition. They came here and stated so many statements. I will start by phrasing their topic. He says that, how do you see how logic one is? He stated that one person from a third world country and the other from a first world country. The question is, what is IQ? Ability to grasp and apply. What have I been taught in the third world country? And what have I been taught in the first world country? That's the question, ladies and gentlemen. If I've been taught how to hunt, and I've been given the things to hunt, won't that improve my IQ in hunting? And if I am given a laptop at a tender age, or better yet a cell phone, won't I understand the cell phones better and apply the knowledge on cell phones better because I've been exposed to that? The thing is, what is IQ? What is intelligence? Intelligence levels are not only about education. They are the things that you can grasp and apply. A mechanic, they say, the one who knows how to sew at a tender age. This is because these are the things they saw within the environment. With this testing government, we thank you.
I'm standing undaunted, supporting the verdict which reads, this House believes that money motivates people more than any other factors at workplace. I will start by rebutting all the points said by the non-affirmers. The non-affirmers spoke about the workplace conditions. But are you aware, you the non-affirmers, that people are even going for gold farming where there are no good working conditions, but they are going there for the need of money. So working conditions will never work at all, but people are looking for money, which is a benefit for them. So your point lies flat. The non-affirmers says that people are working for everything they want. They failed to explain that everything they want is what. So how are we going to know that everything they want is what? So your points need much flesh. You need to explain your points, not just saying people need everything they want. What are the ones they want? The non-affirmers also said about leadership styles, and they said that it is going to motivate people to execute their task. But I'm going to rebut all that point. The leadership style that is going to rebut all you have said is the autocratic leadership style, where there will be egoistic only leaders, the dictators, which threatens others and actually leads to resentment and desertion at work. So that we will never motivate people, but only discourage them. We will demotivate them and we will desert your company. So your point gains no value. They say that gender-based opportunities are going to motivate people at workplace. But these points actually have got nothing to mean in this debate. Because people are only awarded, people are only recruited according to their qualifications. So how are you going to say that gender is going to affect that? Yet people are actually recruited by their qualifications and not by gender. And the Constitution of Zimbabwe actually advocates for equality and not for gender that you are talking about. I don't know whether you have visited the Constitution or you have just come with your points which are nothing else other than something that needs to